Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Excellent Decisions podcast. This is Robert McPhee, your host, and we're here to help you make more excellent decisions based on vision and values and value rather than stress and pressure. And this episode today is part of what I'm calling the Wisdom Series, a series of short episodes designed to help you tap into the same amazing network of people that I have access to help us cope and deal effectively with this historic situation that we're dealing with right now with the coronavirus. So today I have with me Bobbie DePorter from San Diego, California, and Bobbie and I have known each other for a long time and worked together on several projects. She is the founder of Super Camps, which, gosh, Bobbie, how long ago has it been since Super Camps?
This is our 39th year.
39 years.
Going on 40.
See how much wisdom is here. So when I was thinking about all the wise people that I have in my network, and those of you who know me know that being a parent and supporting young people is a huge part of what I value. I thought immediately of Bobbie as someone who we could tap into her wisdom as far as not only just a general perspective about how to cope effectively with everything that's going on, but also specifically for young people. So we'll get there. But Bobbie, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate that. And how are you doing with all this craziness going on?
Yeah, like everyone else, trying to figure it out and maintain. Yeah, that's what we're doing, and just talking with our staff and what's next and what do we need to change. I keep looking at what am I not thinking of that is I've never thought of. Like, how do I think in ways that are different that I've never had to before, and make no assumptions.
Yeah, things have really changed. So what is your assessment like as you look at everything that's going on out there in the world from your perspective as a person who's been in business for a long time and who's been working with young people again for a long time? Like, what's your perspective? What are you seeing out there in the world?
Well, what's so unprecedented about this is, it's impacting everybody, which often, people go through their own crisis or stress or things that happen personally, and they feel like, oh, I'm the only one, or I'm handling all this. And with it affecting everyone, I always think of two things true at the same time. I've heard that that's the sign of an intelligent person that can hold seemingly opposite things at the same time. So I always go from one side to the other. One is always looking at what do we need to do? Where's the opportunity? With whatever happens in the world, there is opportunity out there, and it's seeing it. And how do we get together? And how do we move on it? Now more than ever, I think it's for speed. One is just sitting back and what's happening, and it depends on your own situation, but what can you move forward with and look at that opportunity. I'm one that also wants to look at worst case scenario. I don't dwell on it. I just get clear on what it is and the impact and maybe a couple of strategies. It helps me calm down that I know that there is one. Now, people are different. I'm married to Joe, and Joe doesn't look at the worst case, best case the same way I do. He just moves forward down the middle of, what he needs to do. So I think it is very individual how you look at it and need to move forward.
Have you found over these past couple of weeks when things have really, really ramped up that given the work that you do and that you do have that perspective of being able to look at it from different angles like that, are you finding yourself called into kind of helping people calm down? There's so much panic that seems to be an invitation into panic anyway. Are you finding that you get called into kind of helping people calm down a little bit with everything going on?
Yes, absolutely. One is looking at our own staff and internally, and the other is our clients. And we have 3 different main groups of clients and talking with them. One is sometimes that they want to take action immediately or cancel something immediately. Sometimes it's appropriate, and other times it's like, we don't know in 2 weeks what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You may be able to have your event. This program may be happening in X amount of weeks. So that's the calm down. It's just, and we look at several strategies so that to help them calm down. It's like, what is the, non-refundable refund, or what will happen there, or we continue it for however long we need to, so it doesn't increase. So whether you cancel today or 2 months, it doesn't affect that. What are other options? You want to, if it's not going to happen, will you roll over till next year? Can we get a date in mind, and keep the resources? Or are we going to, one is the virtual aspect is online learning, e-learning is so a lot of people, as well as us, very much focusing on it. One thing that happened 2 weeks ago, things move so fast. I keep saying, you wake up every single day and you
I
don't know
know.
what that day's going to bring. And it's like, what's been happening is way beyond anything I could have even imagined. So a couple of weeks ago, we have been planning 14 days of training in Malaysia, and we've been working with them for about 3 years. So this was a big culmination, celebration, 14 days of training. Our facilitator, who Mark, was actually on an airplane in San Diego on his way to Malaysia 2 weeks ago for this 14-day training. He landed in LA to just transfer, and he got a call on his phone, urgent, and they told him not to come. So he had to get a suitcase off, and the very next day, he's in our conference room delivering it virtually. It was we did all day trainings for 8 days that he did in there, which is challenging to jump into, but doing what we need to do.
Yeah, well, it's such a beautiful example too of maintaining the commitment. I know you have a really strong commitment to doing this work and supporting people. And like you said, we're in this position where things are changing literally day by day. And rather than say, oh, we can't do it, I just think that's so fabulous that you figured out a way, to, it's not ideal. It would be better if Mark could be there in person. I know I had the same thing happen last Thursday. I was supposed to be in Texas this week, and I got a call and said, no, you're not going to Texas. You're not going to Florida next week. You're going to be home. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this. And even as I was scheduling these calls over, there's 14 very generous people who have raised their hand and said, yes, I'd love to do that with you. And I'm looking ahead 2 weeks and going, I have no idea what those conversations are going to be like, because it's going to be completely different.
It's going to be interesting at the end of this, and look at the first conversations and where they are. Just today, with more changes, we gathered our staff virtually because we didn't know that they were all going to be home. And so I think one of the things that's so important is tell the truth, be transparent, be open, get everybody heard. How's everybody feeling? What questions do they have? And then that feeling of connectedness. We had all of our staff on an hour-long call today, and it was going around with everybody sharing, what are they doing? What are they seeing? And we learn from each other, who can support. But just that feeling of, I've heard people say, circle the wagons, get in close, because so much of it is connection and community. I think is needed so much when people are so isolated, being in their homes or wherever they are, but they are isolated. So just how do you come together on a regular basis where people could count on it and be tapped in?
Yeah. Well, I'm reminded as you're talking too, I know in the super camp work and the work that you do, again, mostly or largely with young people, you have the 8 keys. And maybe you could just share those really quickly, but I'm just so aware in this moment as we're talking, like that's such a beautiful example of things that are so important to remember. Like at this particular time, I'm experiencing around my own excellent decisions work, like there's never been a more important time for people to understand what it means to make excellent decisions. There's never perhaps been a more important time for people to be aware of and remember the 8 keys. Could you just share those really quick?
Yes.
I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't tell Bobbie I was going to do this.
Yeah, I've got them pretty well embedded.
She's got them internalized. I might be able to get 6 out of the 8, so I'm going to let you do it.
Let's start, the 8 keys of excellence. And I love the word excellence and share that with you. And there's different definitions, but the one I like, and it was actually in Webster too, is good qualities and high degree.
Mm.
And I love that because we always look at the good qualities that create our core inside. We work with a lot of young people and adults and educators, and thinking of it, of what do you stand for, who you are as a person. And it's that core, and you don't have to worry about how you're going to respond to some situations because you know who you are and you know the principles that guide you. So that is where we start. But there are 8 keys of excellence, and the first one is integrity, and that is matching your behavior with your values. So first, it's knowing what you do value, and then looking at your behaviors. And now in this situation, I think more than ever, looking at your integrity, because a lot of us are in scarcity, and how am I going to survive the next day? What are my needs, and what are we doing? But how we interact with each other, that we always come from that place of integrity of these are my values, so this is of course how I'll react or behave because I know my values. So the next is failure leads to success. It's learning from our mistakes, and view failures as feedback that help us learn, grow, and succeed. So right now, there's lots of challenges, not necessarily personal failures, but just challenges in the world, and
Yeah,
looking to
setbacks.
see, yeah, you keep trying things, get the feedback, try another way, get feedback, try another way. And it's always forward motion. That's what I like. It's not like, oh my gosh, I'm in this terrible situation, or I failed. What am I going to do now? I'm so bad. It feels like you're going backwards and you're rerunning it in your mind over and over, where you come from a place of, we have 3 questions that I love. What happened? What did you learn? What will you do differently next time?
Mm.
So that always moves you forward in everything that you're going to do. And the next is speak with good purpose. Speak kindly and positive, and it's looking at the intentions of our words, that they're always to build people up, not tear them down. We come from the place, and learned this from Dr. Lazanoff, one of my mentors, a primary mentor in accelerative learning, but he always said that there is no neutral. And think of it, if you come from the place of there is no neutral, everything you do, every message, everything you say is either positive and building people up, or it's tearing them down. So it's the intentions of your words of what you want. Now, sometimes it's feedback, or it could sound like, here's something to grow from, or here's a personal share that I need to share you of something that's bothering me. But it's always of that intent to build people up, or to have a better relationship, or to move it forward, not to, I'm right, you're wrong, and leave it in that uncomfortable place. So, we always say speak with good purpose. Now here's one for now. It's this is it, make the most of every moment.
Mm.
And I don't know that there's ever been a time when it's the time to make the most of every moment, because there's so many challenges out there that we just keep saying, what else can we do? And look at the opportunity, and it's now, and the speed of how we move forward. And as we look back, everything we do now, every moment, is really going to change our future. So we really pay attention and have a this is it attitude. There's nothing we can do on the bigger picture out there in the world. We can't change how politicians are making decisions and moving forward, or just the what is of the world right now and the huge crisis it's in. We can't do, that's too big. But we have the personal things we can do. So we keep thinking of, what is it that we're doing personally that we can move forward with? We have commitment. Commitment is following your vision unwaveringly. So it really is, I always say there's, when you cross, for me, it's putting a stake in the sand. And when I make a commitment, I don't make it lightly. It's not, it's not like, oh, let's have lunch today, and I keep that commitment. Yes, that's a smaller level, but I always hold commitment on the bigger level of my vision and who I am and what I stand for in the world and where I'm moving forward. And I choose carefully. I don't want to make commitments that I can't keep, or that are derailing me from what else I want to do in the world. Then we have flexibility. be willing to do things differently. Also, actually, this time is
How
an
is that
excellent time
possibly?
for all these
How is
keys.
that possibly relevant?
Yes, yes. And I sometimes sometimes I've made a decision and I have a lot of investment. I'm quite excited about the commitment. And then I find, oh, it's not working. And a little ego gets in the way. So it really is checking in with the ego and viewing things and saying, what's not working and what do I need to do differently?
Mm,
So, commitment is following your vision unwaveringly. You just go towards it and you do whatever it takes to get toward it. But it's the strategy. Maybe it's one strategy that's off, not working. You go to the other, you go to the other. That's the flexibility other than, you know, um, just one straight shot. We've heard those analogies so often of, traveling to the moon. They're off track, 99.9% of the
right,
time.
right.
They just keep tacking, the same as a sailboat. So from flexibility, we also, then the eighth key is balance. And the balance is being your best self. And that it is really about knowing what's important to you and just following what's important to you and knowing what that is. Because, I think about how busy I get and that um, I think about when it's really fulfilling me and it's important to me, then I feel good and balanced because I am fulfilled inside. Also, there's the key of ownership. I think I skipped over that one. I have to look
I
at
was
that. It's
counting. I said,
about,
wait, that can't be the eighth key. I only wrote down 7.
yeah, it's ownership. It's accountability and
Mm,
responsibility. And I love this line. It's own the choices you make and the results that follow, so that there's no excuses or justification. It's always like owning what you said um, and then look at the results. People
yeah,
respect for that too. If you've made a mistake or made a decision that went a different way, if you own it and say, what do we need to do? People relax into that and they have a lot of respect for that versus trying to hide it. So it is about the truth and ownership and what do I need to do about it. So they
yeah,
all fit together. It's pretty hard just to live one key. They all kind of overlap and support each other.
yeah.
Then they come together in creating that core inside.
I feel a little bit like I gave you a pop quiz, like an unannounced pop quiz, but I'm so glad, like, again, as we were talking about what you were talking about before, and I heard like elements of the 8 keys in there, and it was so clear to me, like this is so valuable. Like this is like a rewind and listen to it again moment. Like these
Mhm.
are all things, and I was laughing at the flexibility one because that's like, oh my God, like,
I know. And you use the word elements. Sometimes I say, scientists will take a sample of, core of stone or something to look at the elements in it.
mhm.
So I sometimes say, if I took a sample of your core, what are the elements that I would
Ooh, ooh.
find?
That's a
What
good
makes you
question.
up?
That's a good
What
question
makes
for
who
all of
you
us.
are?
And it's a good question right now to say, have our elements changed? Like are we staying true to our true core? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's so awesome. Thank you for letting me give you that little pop quiz. Um, so the other thing I wanted to touch on, and when I first thought of you, this was something, and I think it's so important. Again, it's in alignment with my core and my values. You've done so much work with young people and helping young people really be their best, and setting up young people to be able to express who they really are, and be on purpose and reaching their potential in the world. And as you look at everything that's going on right now through the lens of young people, and also through the lens of people who are supporting young people, parents and teachers and counselors and people like that, like, do you have any ideas or suggestions or thoughts about how young people can do the best they can given everything that's going on, and how people can best support the young people in their own lives and around them?
Mhm. One is that the young people know what's going on. In the past, depending on the age of the children, sometimes parents feel like, oh, I need to shield them from all this. And particularly, it's pretty hard to shield children of something that you're worried about. So one is we do want to model calm, if that's true for us, if we can do that.
Hmm.
And the other is communication. It is that sit down and asking, don't assume or try to avoid. It's asking your children, what do you know? How are you feeling? What questions do you have? Starting conversations like that, oh my goodness, they go so far. And one of the things we tell parents too, a hot tip is talk less and listen more.
Mm. Say that
Off,
again.
yeah, talk less and listen more. And then,
I'll let
we could
you
have,
talk more and we'll listen more. Yes, that's so, oh, simple words of brilliance. Oh my gosh.
yeah. And we ask a question, and sometimes we want to fill it in for them without. And if they don't say anything, sometimes they don't want silence. They're uncomfortable with silence, so they'll jump in with an answer, and the child is still sitting there.
Yeah.
So if you ask a question, even if they're silent, just wait for a moment. Give them a moment to compose, think. They want to think about what they feel for a moment, and then just be quiet. Usually when you're quiet, they'll speak up eventually. They'll say something.
Yeah.
So really
Count to
building on
10.
that.
As adults, we need something to do during the quiet too. I always tell people to count to 10. Be okay. It's quiet. Like if it gets to 10 and if you need to say something, go for it. But count to 10. Oh man. Yeah. And what,
Everybody's pretty much at home now, but if we also, for parents, especially if there's one parent in a car with one child, because you asking questions and having conversation because you're driving, and it seems to create a safer place for youth
mhm.
because you're not looking them in the eye. Sometimes when you look
Interesting.
them straight in the eye, they start to get more uncomfortable. Then sometimes within a car you're driving, so okay, the parent's not looking at me, I feel a little bit of space to be myself, to feel and talk and not have to look in the eyes, which feels more confronting. And
Yeah.
also, if you're not in a car, if you're just sitting, sometimes if you had a third object, we call it a 3-point conversation. If you're sitting with somebody, sometimes it's appropriate knee to knee in the eye if it's a emotional or a loving place or something you want to. But anything that is any controversial or how do you feel or anything, if there is a third point, a piece of paper or something else to look at so that you're not, you're angled, you're in a
Yeah.
triangle shape, you're not knee to knee confrontive with them, giving them space. Bottom line is
Yeah.
just give them space and time to express. And definitely that's what we're about, is wanting them to express themselves.
Yeah. It feels like it creates a little more safety. That makes so much sense. Yeah. And I'm noticing, I had a conversation yesterday with a woman who's a friend who has younger children. She has two girls who are, I think, 5 and 7. And my children are much older now. My youngest daughter's 22. And she she looks at my kids. I tell people I had an unfair advantage because I was working with Jack while my kids grew up, right? It's like a whole life of super camp. Um, but she looks at my kids and kind of goes, that's the way I want my girls to turn out. Can you help me? And so she was asking me some of these kinds of questions, and I was realizing how different it is with older children. I mean, I still think, my children at, 26, 24, and 22, I still consider them certainly young people, but they're young adults. And what I'm noticing is there's so much to learn from them. Are you seeing that? I know you're working with everything from, you know, middle school or younger all the way up through college, but are you noticing, especially with the older ones, that there's so much we can learn from them?
Absolutely. And it's asking them questions and really listening so they
Mm-hmm.
open up, because a lot of times they experience people not giving them a respect or really thinking they have much to share and put down. And so really being truly interested and just sitting there, they have a lot of wisdom to share. I'm always um, impressed. I don't think I've had a conversation with a young person that I gave open time and space to and was really there and interested in listening. They have profound things to say.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and they need the support. I'm noticing my youngest daughter's in Washington D.C. now, and I'm just aware that she's feeling really far away. You know, her brother's in San Diego, her sister's in Seattle, we're in Northern California. So she's the one who's further away. And it's just different that she wants to feel close. And again, it's probably that thing you were talking about safety. You know, there's a certain safety and security in feeling close to family and close friends. So I want to talk to you all day, but I know we committed to keeping these short. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up? This has been so wonderful.
It's just keeping the faith day by day, because like sometimes I look at a staff, can you just picture us a year from now? You know, it feels like there's an arrow being pulled, and there's, you know, so much challenge right now. But, you know, like with our super camps coming up this summer, I feel like we're still of the mindset that they're happening and this is going on. And it just feels like now more than ever, people are going to want to get back together and learn and get back to what feels like normal. So I see an acceleration once it moves beyond, and we can get back to that place.
Awesome. And then finally, you and I talked before we started the recording. You're doing something on Facebook at the Super Camp page. You want to talk about that briefly, just as a resource that people can go to stay connected, especially again for young people and people who want to be as supportive as possible to young people?
Yes, and we came up with this because a lot of parents are working from home, a lot of them, most of them, and also school's out and children are at home. So a lot of parents are saying they're trying to work at home and their children are going to school at home, all this to juggle. So just out of support, we have a daily free learning strategies. And part of it is for students, how do you navigate, you know, learning from home and what that is and what's going to support you in learning from home right now.
Yeah.
So it's a daily experience that we're giving them. And we're also developing a daily kind of mentoring process that'll come out in a couple of weeks as well, where they can actually get mentored by our Super Camp facilitators, because so many of the children are home right now.
Right. Awesome. So, and yeah, and we're gonna share the link to all that, and then just in general, and just so people know, and you just kind of scratched the surface of this, but we talked about Bobbie's expertise with young people and super camps and all that, but she's also got a ton of expertise and wisdom to share in the area of accelerated learning. So what she's offering with this, you know, these little hints and tips, this is not just, you know, thought for the day kind of a thing. This is years and years of experience in learning, specifically accelerated learning. So that's an amazing resource being made available. And then just if they're curious to know more about you or about super camps, what's the best way for people to reach out and learn more?
Well, our website is supercamp.com. And then we also work with a lot of schools across the nation and other countries, and that is quantumlearning.com.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you again so much for doing this. It's a perfect example of what I wanted this to be, which is a sharing of wisdom, ideas and thoughts and perspective that people can use in this time of lots of that external stress and pressure that I end up talking about. And really, really appreciate it so much. Thank you for being willing to do this. And for those of you listening, thank you for joining us. We're going to continue for the next 2 weeks through April 3rd, I want to say. I should remember that because that's my wife's birthday. And we're going to keep sharing people from my network who I feel have a perspective that would be valuable, again, during these times where things are a little bit more chaotic than we like them to be. So thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. And Bobbie, thank you again so much for sharing
Thank
your
you,
time
Robert.
and your wisdom. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye, everyone.